Welcome back again to yet another briefing. I recapitulate a bit the title of the course, and again this is Dialogue of Strategic Purpose, speaking for and with the EU on foreign and security related issues. There are so many people who think that they've done the right thing in the past only to come to a different conclusion later. So being able to see earlier mistakes is an essential part of progress, not only in science, where the failed experiment often gives impetus to true scientific progress. It's also the basis for progress in international relations, in my view. My problem has been, as an EU official not least, that there have been so many people who have been absolutely sure about what I should do, but so little empirical evidence what was the right thing to do, because as I was living through the first 15 years of European foreign and security policy, after the unsuccessful initial European efforts to stop the wars on the Balkans, we were of course living through a unique period with no historical precedent. I've seen European security and defense policy being initiated and developed in both substantial and less impressive directions, where there have been of course successes and failures, sometimes linked to problems of dialogue. Not only just problems in relation to operations, which I will come back to. To a large extent, this has to do with the fact that many people lack conviction and an empirical understanding of the potential importance of these policies. So now let's take the next step and introduce a few things of a more general nature, which are often standard elements in training courses, also on higher levels. That is the notion of zooming out. This notion is linked to actual significant findings in the scientific literature about what brings motivation and purpose to your work. In brief, what I'm referring to is the satisfaction and energy generated through oversight and perspective. It has been finally understood in the literature that creative work cannot be ordered through reward and punishment systems. It has to be stimulated by appealing to the intrinsic motivation of most people just to learn things, to use the joy of learning, which is much more important than people have thought in the past. The notion here is that the energy and enthusiasm and general motivation for EU dialogue to a large extent has to do with the way the dialogue is pursued. Namely, it has to be done with a strategic purpose, where you feel comfortable that you have understood the context in which you are working. You're not just quoting the European global strategy or any other strategic document. You are reflecting the way strategy relates to other documents, other things in the context of relevance, and to the substance and situation in which you are situated. So losing perspective means losing energy and conviction, and this obviously also will reflect on your interlocutor. I can reveal here an early reaction by an American ambassador running out in the corridor in Vienna after a particularly boring weekly meeting with the EU, shouting to everyone who wanted to listen, "Why do I do this?" Or to another location shortly before the entry into force of the Lisbon Treaty, a question for an American interlocutor: will I be able to put all my questions to my EU interlocutor in the future? Or will I again, with the new treaty, be told that these questions are not within the mandate of my post? But even after the entry into force of the Lisbon Treaty, of course, with Brexit, with the debate about the EU institutions and their roles in relation to member states and citizens, there are no answers, in fact, to these questions. No easy answers. Dialogue has become much more difficult, for instance, with Russian interlocutors as well, externally. It's even become controversial whether the EU should at all endeavour to have a serious dialogue with interlocutors such as Russia. And one can imagine many senior managers who are worried about delegating authority to dialogue in this situation. So what I'm saying is perhaps obvious, but needs to be kept in mind throughout the whole course, that oversight and contextual understanding is more important than ever when you are preparing for dialogue. Even those who are engaged in seemingly technical discussions often will be perceived as engaging in dialogue of political significance. It suffices to remind about the discourse on hybrid warfare, where many people today are legitimately worried about propaganda and disinformation, and again after the Cold War about infiltration, etc., to see the importance of these aspects. You have to know what you are doing. So this is the main point of this third introductory briefing. If you think that you don't need overview and context, you are probably even certainly wrong. So thanks again for listening in and welcome to the next briefing. Click below to go to the next briefing.